So this evening, we have with us a range of entrepreneurs. We have Jeff Chutter from the class of 70, who is the president and CEO of Whitewater West. I was actually here on campus just a couple of weeks ago speaking with some of our students. Marie Schwartz is from the class of 76. She's a founder of teenlife.com that she started and eventually sold, and she's actually working for the new owners. Matt Grazik is class of 85. He's the CEO of Tarot Dynamics, which I'm interested to hear more about. And Christy Pruitt-Bush is the class of 85 and is the owner and founder of a line of pet food for the love of Dutch. And so I'm going to ask each of them to give us just a 2-minute synopsis of who they are, how they got there. I'm not going to cut you off after 2 minutes. But just to get us going, and then I have a raft of questions, some of which were submitted ahead of time by people who registered for the call. So why don't I go and start with Jeff, and just give us your 2-minute synopsis.
Super, thanks, Clive. Vancouver boy, which means I'm from the 51st state. Was at ASP from 66 to 69, class of 70. My grade 9, 10, 11 was the last class. It was in Lucien, Madame du Barry's chateau. She was the mistress of Louis XIV. So having English in her bedroom with frescoes on the ceiling and marble fireplaces was rather fun before moving to the campus in Garches. Following ASP, it was University of Toronto, Bachelor of Commerce, joined KPMG, the CPA firm, where I got my CPA. And then saw a small little wee water slide park, was hugely intrigued. The entrepreneurial spirit was twigged, mortgaged myself up to the underside of the nostrils and built a small water park in British Columbia. That first summer, 4 different guys came through the park, said, I'd love to do this in my hometown. Can you help me? Back then, the word water park didn't exist. We had to make our own molds to make the slides. So I said, at 28, 29, I said, yes, we can do the engineering, provide the slides, the steel structure, the towers. And we concluded those contracts. And by and large, the rest is history. I got to the point where operations wasn't of interest to me. I enjoyed the creative, the development side, building these things globally. And we're in our 45th year now, have run with that. The company is subsequently run by 6 presidents of the 6 key business units. 2 of them are relatively new startups, which I'm sure we'll get into during the course of the discussion. But it's been a great run, and what kid today doesn't know what a water park is? And it's fair to say that we've done the majority of them globally, everything from Disney to Universal. Where the president is right now, we've just opened in Riyadh, in Abu Dhabi, in Dubai, in Qatar. The one in Qatar is rather fun. It's 250 feet high. The tallest slide, you go into a capsule, 3, 2, 1, and the floor drops out, and you go all the way down to the bottom. Absolutely huge. But in the process now of contemplating, more than contemplating, transition, succession, which is a whole new process for me.
Wow. Jeff, before I ask Marie to give us a couple of minutes, I have to ask, do you test each of these rides yourself?
I've deemed my life way too valuable for that. No, there's too many. Like we do 50, 60.
Hold on a second. Megan, could you?
Number 2.
There we go. There we go. Sorry, go ahead, Jeff.
No, we do 50, 60 projects a year. So no, but that's not to say that I don't ride them. I do that, when it's appropriate, and owners always want the CEO to throw on a bathing suit and jump in a raft, and it's another tough day at the office.
Excellent.
What can I say?
Marie.
Yeah, so I was very fortunate to move to Paris when I was starting 5th grade from Detroit, Michigan, where there were riots. And then we arrived and there were riots. This was in 1968. And at first, so my parents shopped us, we went to all these various schools, and the British school was totally scary because it still had inkwells, in the desks. So I remember, loving ASP. My parents thought we would only be there for 2 years, and then we ended up they stayed for 18 years, and I graduated in 1976. So for me, that was a fantastic experience. I think there were 12 kids in my class who were there as long as I was. And I was part of the bubble generation, where in 11th grade, these 2 giant bubbles were erected because we had all these kids flooding in from, I think IBM moved its headquarters to Europe or to Paris for something, for international, I think. So it was a very unique time to be there. And I went to college in the US. At the time, there was no baccalaureate. And I went to Princeton, which again, I had no idea of what I was, going to, and didn't know anything about television or any of the popular things that people know. But I did feel very prepared. I think I was very comfortable with, being in a new place. That's what ASP taught me, and I jumped right in and I got an engineering degree there, and then got a scholarship to go to Hamburg for a year. So I did that. Anyway, I just want to go through my entire resume, but I just ended up at one point moving with my family from Westchester, New York to Boston, which I was very excited about because it was a bigger city, and realized that I had to find what my kids could be doing over the summer while I was working, and they were in middle school, and the traditional camps just weren't appealing. But I discovered that all these colleges had these things called pre-college summer programs. And lots of other companies were providing unique experiences for kids in grades 7 through 12. So I just put a booklet together for the PTA, and they sold it for $20. It was a little fundraiser. And then 6 schools, decided they wanted to sell it. And then 8 schools. And then we had a fair where these programs and stuff could show up and, and talk to people directly. And everything was extremely successful. And someone said to me, Marie, why don't you do this full time? I mean, look at this. You can't find a parking space, whatever. So I had to stop what I was doing. I went for it. And so basically what I was trying to do is replicate the experience I had as a child for my sons without being able to live abroad. So they did all kinds of interesting stuff in different countries, locally, whatever. And it just has become this company where we now have more than 10,000, we list more than 10,000 opportunities, both academic and enrichment oriented, for 13 to 19-year-olds. Anyone can go and search for something that their child might be interested in, astrophysics, for example, or, neuroscience. I mean, all these programs exist. You just was super hard to find them. And so last year I thought maybe I should, try to find a succession plan. And US News and World Report bought the business. So we're part of there's a unit that also does college advising, and we are currently aligned to basically help families launch their teens successfully into life, both before and after, leading up to college and leading up to college and then going to the right college. So there's lots of changes going on, as you know, in the industry. AI is interesting. We have to, prove ourselves. But I'll talk more about that in a minute. But yeah, it's been a fun ride, and ASP absolutely informed what I ended up doing.
And if it's not rude to ask, because Jeff was telling us about how he started his company when he was 28, 29,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, I started mine when I was 50.
50. Okay, great.
Yeah.
Thank you. Christy.
Yeah, so I was at ASP. I graduated in 85. I was only there for 1 year. Before that, my sister and I went to École Active Bilingue, and we were both really happy to get out of there. So ASP was wonderful. Graduated, went to a year of college in Paris, and then ended up back in the States. Ended up with a degree in foreign languages literature. And because I was living in Hartford, Connecticut at the time, I ended up in insurance. And back in those days, they were really the only ones hiring. So fast forward 25 years, I went through insurance companies, workers' comp claims, and eventually became my last job was director of risk management and insurance for the Hearst Corporation. And after all those years, at the age of 51, I guess, I decided I had had enough of corporate America and I wanted to do something that I was passionate about, that actually brought me joy. So I knew I loved dogs. I was already on a holistic, treating my dog's illnesses through, with holistic food, herbs, supplements, and stuff like that. So I decided to start my own dog food company. We sourced all of our ingredients from local farms. That was important. I wanted organic. I was going to, the food was designed to be as clean as possible for dogs that may have issues with other food. So I bought How to Start a Business for Dummies. I read as much as I could. I reached out to, I had.
Oh, I think Christy froze.
Yep.
Comes back. All right. Well, we'll come back to Christy. Did she say 51? I think she said 51 when she started that. That's great. Matt, Tarot Dynamics, what does it do?
So we've invented a brand new type of vertical takeoff and landing aircraft that's unlike any other VTOL aircraft. It has wings that fold and unfold during flight to like transition between configurations that are optimized for vertical flight versus horizontal flight. I'll brag about it all day long because I take zero credit for the design because I didn't invent it. But my background, I was in ASP 5th through the 8th grade from 77 to 81, and still some of the fondest memories of my life, from there, and have some great relationships that came from that, and just try to get back to Paris at least once a year, and I always try to make the pilgrimage to ASP just to see the campus and breathe in the air. But I felt a strong education at ASP and really excelled sort of in math and chemistry and physics and the sciences, and hadn't really discovered that I had an interest in that until I got to ASP. And the curriculum there is kind of allows you to grow and color outside the lines in the right places, and things I was good at and things I was bad at. So that kind of set the course for me, and continued that when I moved back to the States. We moved to California, and I got I started college as a mechanical engineering major at Cal Poly San Luis Obispo, and then after a semester, just decided I really need to switch to business. I had businesses in high school. My folks were sort of decidedly middle class, and if I wanted a drum kit, a car, a motorcycle, or whatever, I had to figure a way of kind of getting that myself. So I was always a hustler, in business in that way, and just loved that. So decided to switch majors to entrepreneurship and transferred to Loyola Marymount University in Southern California. That was one of the few accredited entrepreneurial programs or schools that had an accredited program back then. This was transferred in 86. I graduated in 89, and I'd started a couple of businesses on the side. And you had mentioned KPMG. I'd worked for Coopers and Lybrand when there was such a thing. It was one of the big 8 doing forensic accounting because I had to pay off my student loans, and that's what paid the most. And started some businesses on the side, and one was doing well, a speech recognition software company called Zygote Computer to control your Macintosh computer with your voice. And quit my job to run that full time, and I sold it to a public company 10 months later, and that was sort of the beginning of my entrepreneurial journey, and been a technical entrepreneur primarily in the software space, but also in biodiesel. And I built a quant trading hedge fund also over 3 years. But the company that I'm running right now is really interesting. It's Tarot Dynamics, and like I said, it has this folding wing autonomous aircraft design. And these are not small drones; they're not carrying human beings, so they're not piloted, but they're not the kind of thing that you buy for Christmas. These are things that we build for the defense industry and also commercial industry, so they'll deliver critical cargo repair cargo to naval ships at sea, or remote mining operations, or oil and gas platforms, and that kind of thing. So I guess I'll stop there and we'll just continue the
Yeah,
conversation.
we'll get into more details later. Christy, we lost you.
My power went out.
Oh,
Wow.
And then my
Okay.
printer came on and everything was humming, and I tried to get back in. So here I am. Sorry
All
about
right.
that.
Where were we? Did you wrap it up? I can't remember.
Well, so I was making the dog food. I ended up stopping the dog food. I'm studying to become a certified pet nutritionist, and the company will kind of be reinvented a little bit, as will I. So that's kind of my story.
Excellent. So I have a lot of things I'd like to ask, and I'm going to start with something. And I hope it's not a downer when I ask this question, but I think it's something that those of us who have ever thought about starting a business, the difference between entrepreneurs and non-entrepreneurs, everybody has ideas, but entrepreneurs actually start those ideas. And so I'd like to ask, I'll start with Marie. What doubts did you have that you had to overcome, if any? Was there anything where you were biting your fingernails and saying, don't do this, do this? What were the doubts that were going through your mind?
oh man. Well, I was very passionate about this subject and about the need. So I just persevered. Doubts. Well, I definitely had to. So for me, anything that was advertising supported went through a huge transition during the time that I had my business. And I almost didn't know, like I didn't know enough to know that I
Yeah.
might not make it, and so I just kept having to pivot. So we went from a printed book that was sold for $20 to hosting everything on a website that I found that it was like a paint by numbers set. You could drop in things, but the structure was already there. And then I had to create a new website. So I don't think I didn't know what I didn't know, and I just kept going. And I think the hardest, there was a point where I felt like I can't grow anymore unless I have some more insights. So I joined this organization called Entrepreneurs Organization, which is like YPO, but it's called EO. And I can share the link if someone wants.
Please. Yeah.
But
You can
they have it
that.
in different locations around the country. And they basically paired you up with a mentor, and a small group of you would meet every month. And that was really, really helpful, because I think what I was most frustrated by in some cases were the people I was hiring, and they didn't perform the way I was expecting to, or I didn't know how to interview them properly. So there were certain things like that I definitely had to learn. But as far as doubts, I mean, I didn't have to raise money. I think that was the few times that I did try to go out and raise money, the people I was speaking to did not understand what I was trying to do. They said, is this going to be as big as Facebook? I said, no. And that was it, So it took a while, it took a lot of perseverance and resilience to keep going, but I didn't ever think of stopping.
You often hear from successful entrepreneurs that probably what they didn't know was what
Right.
allowed them to start going with
Right.
these things.
Exactly. Yeah.
Jeff, what about you?
I just started this at 28, and I was a CPA at the time, and my conscious thinking was, what's the worst thing that could happen? The worst thing that could happen is that I would go back and be a practicing CPA with KPMG, which scared the heck out of me, frankly, because the idea of being, a partner at a CA firm auditing other people's books was terrifying, terrifying enough. But I was incredibly naive. Fortunately, found a bank that was even more naive. But when you do these things, you're often asked, like, what's your motivation, etc. And for me, it was, and this is a bit sappy, but to make mom proud. It was a bit goofy, and I was driven by, to a degree, fear of fear of failure, and that proved to be a great motivator.
Mm.
But I think, to your point earlier on, what starts these things out? As I say, I'm sort of going through a succession now, and one of the points I made to our senior leadership team is one of the things and it's difficult to do, try and impart, is the ability to recognize opportunity. I mean, Matt touched on this earlier on, but that's hugely important. All of us are faced with opportunities literally every day, and we all just keep walking. But that ability to see something and say, and then ask a secondary question and a third question and whatnot, and then get motivated by it. I think that's a big differentiator for budding entrepreneurs.
Mm. Christy.
Well, I went into this having no idea what I was doing other than a passion, and something I knew people were looking for out there. And I had done my research. Yeah, so I think not knowing what I was doing and what I was getting myself into was probably a good thing, because it wasn't easy. But it was worth it. And I did find the right people to help me and to guide me. I think I asked some of the right questions. I went to farmers markets. I made relationships before I even started making dog food. So I studied pet nutrition. So yeah, I just kind of did a dive and was like, I hope I hope this works. And yeah, so it did, but it was scary, but worth it.
So, Matt, I could ask you the same question, but actually, you can answer that if you want. But I'm going to come back to you in a second. Christy just mentioned that she went and asked people, and Matt, you had said earlier that, just for disclosure, I didn't invent this. So you don't do everything by yourself. Who are the key people that you had to have around you to get something going? So, Matt, why don't I ask you that question? You can talk about doubts if you want, but who are the key people around you? If it's not this business, the business before, that you had to have and to get this off the ground? Could you have done it yourself?
I think, when I do these things, or if I talk to somebody and they ask me about, what's your advice as an entrepreneur, blah, blah, blah. They want the tactical stuff. How do I raise money? I'm like, I think if I had to choose one answer that was the most important answer to that question, it is to build the best team that you can. It's about the people who are infected with your vision, so much so that it becomes their vision, and that your vision is modified by their vision, and you have this great thing together, because it takes a village. It's hard to build a company by yourself. In fact, you really don't. I mean, you think about Apple and you got Steve Jobs, but then you had Wozniak, and you got, right, like everybody has, Bill Gates has his Paul Allen, and even Sam Altman at OpenAI, like he's got other people. And like, I just don't know. Jeff Bezos is probably the one iconic person you think of. Even Elon Musk, right? He wasn't really the founder of Tesla, and there was a group there, and he's got great leadership around him. And for me, that is the one most important thing. The core leadership team I have here, I've been working with 20 and 30 years. This is my third company with the COO that we have over 23 years. Interestingly, I won't mention their names and out them, but two key people from ASP, from classmates. One, she invested over $250,000 very early in the company. And so she's gonna have a nice payday, because our companies have gone up in value. And another person, I won't out him either, but he spent 36 years at the agency in the CIA, and is a formal advisor to our company, and has been very, very helpful on a bunch of different fronts. So it's the team you have, but it's also kind of your network. And I think that is so important to do that, because you can find a big market, you can have a great sort of competitive advantage with your technology or whatever it is that you have, that's the moat around your business, that gives you that sort of jumpstart and leadership at the beginning. But I think it's the team that really needs to execute, because if you're very successful, you're going to build a company way beyond your own capacity to manage it. I always look to hire people that are better and smarter than I am. I think when I look at my leadership team, everybody is better, you know, at their job than I am at my job. I'm, you know, I want to do that. If I find a better CEO, I'll hire them as well and have them run the company too.
Clive, to underscore what Matt said, there's a book that was written by a group of university guys that identified the greatest companies in America. And then the second part was to determine what made them great. It's a book called Good to Great.
Good to great.
I mean, basic reading for any entrepreneur. But one of the key takeaways there is getting the right people on the bus, sitting in the right seats. And that first part is massively important, as Matt underscores. If you have to pay a bit more, whatever the case may be, get the right people. I've had a number of occasions where I've had the right people and I've put them in positions that weren't fit. They've left the company, and this happened 3 times. And then 6 months later, they recognized that the greener grass was AstroTurf. They came back. I recognized that I had them in the wrong seats, got them in the right seat, a position that was more their passion, and just absolutely took off. But that, getting the right people on the bus, sitting in the right seats, I couldn't underscore more the point that Matt made.
Yeah, it's a great book, right? The pillars are: get the right people on the right bus, get the wrong people off the bus, get the right people in the right seat, drive the bus in the right direction. And there's a difference between like A and B players. The one thing though, they did profile Wells Fargo. That was before the demise. That was one of the companies they chose, which was flying high at the time. But that's one of the books I recommend most.
The Good to Great book?
Yeah.
Good to Great. Yep, it is.
Yeah, there was a Google thing, and this cuts across all industries. And I'll have to think about the name of it, but it was Google did an analysis when they first started up that they said, well, we just have to hire people who went to Stanford, Cambridge, Harvard, put them all in the same room, and then they will do something amazing. And what they found quickly is that it wasn't relevant to that. It was the teamwork on there and how valued people are made to feel when they're in there, that their voice is being heard. So, you know, related to that one. What's interesting, Matt, you had said that if you found another CEO that did better than you, you would hire them immediately. There is something called entrepreneur's disease, not knowing when to get out of the way. But if you look at Jeff and Marie, you guys never did that. You've taken it to where it is right now. Did you ever have any doubts about yourself? I keep going back to this doubt word. I'm sorry. As you went through the whole process there, that am I the right person to take it to the next stage?
That's a good question. That's the book, by the way, Jim Collins, Good to Great. You know, you raise a good point there. Certainly, I think there are lots of examples out there where you see people start something and they hit their glass ceiling early on, and then it fails. They can't take it to the next level. And some of my early partners. That was the experience. In my particular case, the growth, I was able to keep up with the growth, you might say, and it's a learning experience all the way along. And so I was able to, might say, ride it out and remain on top of my game, the company's game, throughout, as most ASP students, I'm sure, would be able to do. But that I think we've all observed, all entrepreneurs have observed companies that perhaps have a great idea, but the leadership isn't fully there, and they perhaps don't have the insight, the right ego to recognize that and then bring someone in to take it to the next level.
Yeah.
Marie, how about you?
I definitely have made mistakes along the way, and I would say I had to learn to let go and delegate. Like I was, you know, comfortable doing every function at first. I mean, I was doing every function, and then slowly letting that go and not micromanaging people was important. The other thing I did, which I think changed my approach a lot, was to come up with the core values of our company. So they spell heart, hustle, education, passion for education, accountability, respect for other employees and, you know, the clients. And then the last one, which is I think the most important, is think like an owner. So I really wanted people who could not only identify the problem, but fix the problem. But it took me a while to get to that point. I mean, I made all the mistakes. I hired the wrong people. I was frustrated. I micromanaged them. You know, they quit, whatever. And so that was the biggest learning I took away from this. And I think a lot of younger entrepreneurs make the same exact mistakes. They think, you know, they have to make all the decisions, and you know, they have to micromanage. It's a normal learning process, but I wish sometimes that they could pick that up sooner. And I've seen that, you know, in others, including myself. I went through the same trajectory. So that
It's
would be
great
my
you came out
advice.
the other side. I mean, that's when I went to Babson, which is known for entrepreneurship, for my MBA program. It's one of the things they talk about is knowing when to get out of the way and not doing that micromanaging, because it stifles the growth of the
Totally
company.
stifles.
One skill that is good for a startup company is not a great skill for going
Growing.
to the next steps. Which
Mhm.
brings me back to Christy. I mean, you had mentioned in getting this off the ground that you had the advice of lots of people. I even think about things like you started your own company. When I think of, you know, Matt and Jeff, at least with your companies, I'm sure you did go through this at the beginning, but how do you even decide what format the company should take? So your company, like, let's talk about the legal end of things. What did you do to start a company?
The first person I reached out to was my accountant, and he had the name of a woman who does marketing and brand development for sustainable, organic, natural companies. That's kind of her focus. So he hooked me up with her, and she had amazing ideas and kind of took me in the direction I wanted to go. And she kind of, like I think somebody said earlier, she took ownership of it. She loved it. Um, and so we teamed up. I had my accountant, and then they referred me to an attorney who helped me get the thing set up. I was in touch with the state of North Carolina, the state of South Carolina, to find out what I needed to do to sell the product in these two states in particular. So yeah, so there were a lot of things I had to do before I could actually get to cooking dog food. And I needed to source product and meat, and so I would go through Whole Foods, you know, and look for the local sign and see where it was from. And I would literally reach out to those farms or those companies that delivered to Whole Foods, and they were like, sure, we can, you know, we can deliver to you too. So it was just, I just went out and asked the right questions, I guess, and talked to farmers and had the right people. I think Rachel, who was the brand lady, she was key. And what I was doing was kind of her niche market. So she already had a really wonderful network of people that helped me out and guided me. And she designed my logo and really helped me put it together. So I was lucky there, I guess.
So, did you bootstrap it yourself? Did you finance everything?
Um, no, my husband and I pretty much financed it, you know, off the ground. Yes.
Okay. Because you always hear about, you know, the starting level, you have friends, family, and fools, then you have angel investors, and then venture capitalists, um, et cetera. But when I was just thinking about one of the things that you said, for those people who are starting a business, to not, I'm going to ask a question after I say this, to not forget that a lot of governments, local governments, state governments, are providing incentives for people to start businesses. So did you get help from them? Did you have to pay that? Was it valuable, whatever it was they gave you?
You mean for the state?
Any, whether it's local, state, any kind of government entity that is meant to help entrepreneurs to start a business, did you get help from them?
I did not get any help from them. I
Yeah.
think the type of business, I reached out to several, for women, for minorities, and no, and maybe I didn't pursue it hard enough. I don't know. I was focused on other things. And
Okay.
it isn't cheap starting up your own business. I will say that you have to have some financial backing if you want to do it right, get the right people. They're going to probably cost a little bit more, but in the end, it's worth it.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, we did it on our own.
Did you ever like share any equity in your company as payment to people, or were you just paying people straight up?
I was paying people straight up.
Okay. So
Yeah.
Matt and Jeff, if I could ask you the same question, because you obviously have been through this, what role does government support play in helping you to grow your businesses, if any?
Profound.
Go ahead,
You go
Matt.
ahead, Jeff.
Go ahead, Matt.
Yeah, you go, Jeff.
Um, from a financial standpoint, zero. There's a program up here, Export Development Corporation puts on that does guarantee deposits from companies. But my startup was building a park, buy land, build it. It costs a bunch of money. I put up a third the money. I had a partner that put up 2/3. I didn't want to have anything for nothing. I owned a third. He owned 2/3. But then 2 years later, pivoted and didn't need any money to do the design, supply, manufacturing side. That was all subcontracted. And those four projects that I talked about, 30% deposit, it ended up being self-funding, and to a large degree, the rest is history. But I think in terms of counsel going forward, I would say Nike got it right. Just do it. Just get on with it.
Yeah.
I'll just weigh in quickly. So in terms of the form of entity that we had talked about, those are really important decisions early on, whether you start a sole proprietorship, an S Corp, a C Corp, an LLC, in what state you incorporate, if you do incorporate, all that kind of stuff. And you can have a 1 hour conversation with an attorney, a startup attorney, and he or she will help you make those decisions. Like, subchapter S Corp seem really great for a variety of reasons, but you can't have non-human investors. So you can't have any trust invest, venture capital, private equity. So you have to be a C Corp. LLCs are notoriously difficult to get outside investors because the advantage of that LLC is it's so flexible, but it's hard for an investor to due diligence that. So if it's a C Corp headquartered in Delaware, like everybody knows what that is. So, those are important decisions, I think, to make early on. Also, if you have a lot of intellectual property, you might want to set up two companies, like one also in Ireland. I mean, the tax laws have changed a bit, but you might want to be able to, go in a tax sheltered environment where your IP is owned and then license that to the U.S. company, and you have all kinds of advantages. Governments are changing, and they're kind of catching on to that. There's been a racket for 30 years. I call it a racket, but it's just a tax strategy. So I'll get off of that subject. But in terms of government support, I think for our company, it's been profoundly valuable on several layers. First, as being sort of a defense dual use company that's also focusing on defense, we've got $18 million of non-dilutive capital from the U.S. Department of Defense to develop our technology that we own. So they're basically paying us to develop the IP, the intellectual property, to design aircraft so that they can buy a bunch of them. And then I can sell that aircraft design into the commercial market, or even into other defense, foreign militaries and other folks like that. We got a lot of support from the state of Colorado. It's one of the reasons why we chose to headquarter our company there after doing a nationwide search. I went to Japan for 10 days with the governor of Colorado on an investment mission about a year and a half ago. They paid us to go to like 7 or 8 different international trade shows where they're not just subsidizing our flights and our lodging and our food, but also giving us a free booth in the most important area at the trade show, the USA Pavilion, where everybody makes sure that they go and check out the companies there. So, that is really valuable. We've gotten $500,000 in just straight up cash from the state of Colorado just for, different programs being in an enterprise zone, and then a little over $2.5 million that we earn over 8 years as we grow our company and bring more labor, hire more people in there. So I think done the right way, all of that's really valuable. And the next step for our company is legislative support from senators and House representatives who are on appropriations committees and key folks like that, that are able to bring funding into our DoD program. So I think if you understand all of those opportunities and you have people who can navigate that for you, because I was a neophyte in all of this. I've learned, since starting this company a couple of years ago, but I think that government support can be very valuable.
So, Matt, that's great. And it's easily imaginable based on what your company does that you get that government support. But you have two startups that came before you. Were they the same sort of thing that may have had defense budget stuff, or were these not related?
Zero
Yeah.
support. Yeah, like there really wasn't for other businesses, we did a little bit of biodiesel. We opened up a biodiesel plant in Michigan, and there was tax incentives and some sort of things where we situated our plant. It was a very novel transesterification technology, so we could situate a biodiesel production plant right at a deep water port, which is unusual. So, but I wouldn't call that a catalytic advantage for the company. It was just sort of like, okay, we can save $2 million here. Whereas the support we've gotten here has been very strategic. Like the dollars are nice, but really being able to get that support to get more business and to develop our technology with non-dilutive capital is really important.
Excellent. Marie, when you got your company going, did you, other than, equity investors, did you have any government help to help you get it off the ground?
No, but I should have probably applied for the women-owned business thing. I mean, I haven't heard a huge amount of female entrepreneurs saying that was essential, but it might have helped. I think what gave me a lot of support, I at the time that I started, there weren't that many female entrepreneurs that were attempting to grow, a large business. There were a lot of lifestyle businesses, but not many that were interested in fundraising or going public and there was a group called the SheEOs. So we got together every month and in a coffee shop, and various people spoke about the things that they were doing and how they were fundraising. So that was super helpful, but it wasn't anything offered by the government. And then I joined another group called Learn Launch, which was all for ed tech businesses. I think finding an industry niche that you can be part of, food related, but there's a couple in the ed tech space that are one's in Boston, one's in New York, and I got involved in those. And then the other thing I could have done, but just didn't work out. I was accepted into something like an accelerator program where they would have given us, I don't know, $25,000 if we participated in this program. But those expenses, that money didn't cover all the expenses of taking my people and putting them up in New York, because you had to be there for 6 weeks. But those are the kinds of things that I think I would advise others to do, is get involved in these groups that can open doors for you and give you visibility. So I definitely, the acquisition that I made that happened last year started because of one of these ed tech communities that I participated in. So that was really worthwhile to do that.
So I'm cognizant that I said that we would go into breakout rooms, and we can still do that in a moment. There are definitely fewer than the 50 people who initially signed up. Maybe they signed up because they wanted the recording afterwards. But I still have a couple of, well, they're key questions to me anyway. And Christy, it's a little early for you because what I'm going to ask about is the exit strategy on these things. How much, I mean, Jeff, you've had your company forever, and I don't know if when you started there was an exit strategy that you had, or if you expected to just keep going as long as you have. Um, Tell me about that.
Nobody believes I will ever retire, but age does take its toll, you might say. And I'm a great believer in youth really doing whatever is necessary to identify their passion and follow their passion. The last thing I encourage youth to do is get a job in the traditional assembly line situation, but work with parents, friends to try and identify in your life what your passion is and run with it. I've got one child, one son, and he went to McGill, then the University of London, got his law degree, went into investment banking. He had a summer job, and I remember him, his buddy saying, "Why don't you go work for your dad?" And his answer was, I said, "Well, what do you tell him?" I tell him the truth. We never talked about it, and we never did. He went out and had a successful career in London in investment banking. And then with that company moved to Toronto, and then we met, and he joined the company about 10 years ago, and today is running one of the startups which will be hugely high profile globally, as we move forward. And maybe that's one of you indicated you want to talk about subsequent startups, that I think is going to be massively exciting. And using a Canadian analogy, it's on a hockey stick trajectory right now, which is so it very, very exciting. But so there's a bit of succession planned into that, and in fact, I'm just hours away, days away from signing a document that will take the growth of the company and assign it to he and one other fellow in a 90-10 relationship.
Wow. Excellent. Marie, can I ask you, when you started teenlife.com and it got going, was there any thought that you had that, like, is this okay, this is what I do? Did you ever think about selling it? Because you did sell it, and now you have some clause, I guess, where you have to keep working for them for a while.
Yes, yes. So I definitely wanted an exit strategy. That was something that the CEOs talked about a lot. And I definitely felt that I wanted to be bought by a strategic buyer. And I didn't want, like, I was approached by two people who I think they're called search funds or something, where they look for a business to run and grow. And I didn't want that. I wanted a strategic buyer who had an audience, because, for me, while Teen Life is not a strict marketplace, like you can't actually enroll in the program, it acts like one, because we have to have an audience for the programs that want to meet that audience. And so the leads we generate are very important for these programs. So I needed somebody who had a big audience. And that's why I chose to, I didn't kick the tires of very many buyers. Once, things got going with US News, it just felt really natural, because they do have a huge audience. And that's what I'm in the process of harvesting, really, or leveraging for the purpose of growing Teen Life. So selling was always in my mind. I just, what I wasn't successful at was raising money. And for whatever reason.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Christy, listening to these things, or maybe you had it in your mind already, now that you're back into this, are you gonna keep it, grow it, sell it? What's gonna happen?
So I never thought about selling it, but I did, well, yes, ultimately, but I did want to expand it. And I was in talks with a couple of companies actually, who that make human food, and they were interested in making the food for me, kind of some sort of partnership. We hadn't gotten quite that far, because I got to the point where we had so many customers that it was hard to keep up, and it was labor intensive, and I couldn't keep that up. And one big, coming from a corporate world into the food industry was kind of a shock, and finding people who, I don't know, just, I was thinking corporate business, get these people in, but hiring people to come in and chop vegetables was like a whole different thing. So getting the right people in was hard for me. I did have a couple of employees who showed up most days and helped me with the work. But yeah, so I wanted to grow, but my growth, since my focus is local, would have been franchises or opening up other kitchens locally to take advantage of the farms and the produce and everything that's you know, that they have regionally. So that was kind of my vision for the future of the company. Unfortunately, you know, I had to stop for personal reasons with the family, take care of my mom. And so I couldn't continue those negotiations and do that at the same time. So that's why we ended up not cooking. But I'm still, you know, if I could find the right company to take over the cooking and help me grow this, I'm all in, and then eventually sell it.
I'm really excited to hear about this because I know that now that you're back into it, it's going to be very cool to keep up with your stories about how it goes from strength to strength. Matt,
So,
you're going to get bought? Are you going to go public? What are you going to do?
So definitely going to get bought. So going they're buzzing right now. They've been buzzing for a while. We've talked with most of the primes. We partner with you know, I can't mention the names, but like, you know, the big defense companies you'd imagine, including abroad in the UK and elsewhere. We've cracked the code for this VTOL aircraft. It's like it's what everybody needs. It's where all the uh, yeah. So we'll definitely get bought at some point. So we're not in the market to sell. We're not trying to get sold, but we do talk. We do have some advisory firms that we maintain, you know, core relationships with. So when somebody has enough commas in their conversation with us, you know, we're ready to have that conversation. But you know, I think that the situation is to put yourself in in the position to be able to do that, so that somebody's going to come and they're going to make a really big offer, and then we don't want to have that the only relationship we have. So we want to be talking with like 6 or 7 companies, and that's what we're doing. We think that we'll sell the company, quote unquote, sell it twice, because we're dual use. Most of the companies interested in the defense, Northrop, Lockheed, Raytheon, L3, AeroVironment, all those companies, they're not interested so much in commercial. So I find profound value in our company in both of those spaces. So if somebody just wants this piece, they're not going to pay me anything for this. So I think what we'll do is we'll probably end up providing an exclusive perpetual royalty-free worldwide irrevocable license to our Transwing platform and all the IP around it to a defense contractor. And then they will do that. And then we will continue to exist as a commercial company to build the value there. And that's still good for the defense contractor because we are improving the IP. We continue to do that. And that values them because they own the rights to it as well, but they don't own the patent. We still own the patent. And then we'll sell it to the commercial market. Or we'll go public. But you know, the key to this, for us, it's all about the aircraft, but now there's a whole ecosystem of AI and battlefield management, or in the commercial world, you know, like a similar thing for you know, the drone as a first responder for public safety. So there's a whole tech stack, and it involves a lot of different vehicles. It's winged VTOLs like ours, it's rotorcraft, it's ground vehicles, it's body cams, it's license plate readers, it's all that stuff in the ecosystem. So I think that whole thing as a package is more valuable than just the wing VTOL that we have. So that's the way I see it happening.
So you're going to get bought out, not go public.
Yeah, but although somebody's trying to take us public right now, I talked with a banker last week who wants to do, you know, reverse merger in a pipe, and I did one of those with a biodiesel company in 2006. Pipe is a private investment in a public company. So you buy a public shell company that's been cleaned up. You're instantly public. You don't have to do an S1 and go through the whole underwriting thing, and you have investors lined up. And what that allows you to do, it provides you know, an equity currency for you to very quickly raise more money and follow on secondary offerings as you hit more milestones. And but you have to have something real there, because it can be really dangerous to do that if the customers the retail investor is expecting you to have a product and you're just kind of goofing around doing R&D. They lose patience, and then you become a target of short investors and class action lawsuits. So that could be difficult.
So, Janet, and unless somebody shoots me down on this, because I have questions that I can keep asking, but I know that we have visitors, viewers here who probably want to ask their own questions. Rather than making you, so I'm suggesting we don't go into breakout rooms, but if you want to raise your hand, and then ask your question to whoever you want to pose it to, please go ahead and do that. Janet can call on you to do that. And in the meantime, I have some questions that I will just keep asking, and then when someone puts their hand up, we can do that. How's that sound? Does that sound good to everybody? Janet, you have a question?
Yeah, so I wanted to ask Matthew, you talked as we were kind of warming up tonight about your experience at a cafe in Paris, how you were waiting for someone and a journalist came, and the end result is a very good story about your company. I'm wondering if you could talk a little bit about how the social network or interactions with people kind of off the cuff can contribute to your growth and success.
Yeah, this was last May. I was sitting here in this chair in California because I kind of go between here and Colorado. I was on the phone with a prospective investor in Switzerland, and we're talking 10 in the morning my time, or maybe 7 in the morning, I think it was. And then after the call, I walked downstairs and I talked to my wife and I said, you're not gonna believe this, but I have to get on a plane today to get to Paris. I got to find a flight. I got to get to Paris. I'm meeting with him on Saturday. This was like a Wednesday or a Thursday. And so I went out there and it turned into just being not a deal I wanted to do. It involved Bitcoin and so on. So I'm just sitting in Montmartre at a cafe by myself, having dinner, flying back the next morning, struck up a conversation with the table next to me, happened to be Americans. And one of the people there was Jill Bastian, and she's sort of the showrunner for News Nation, which is, the third largest cable news after like Fox and CNN here in the United States. And so they ended up doing a big show last night on prime time on our company, a showcase. So taking advantage of those kinds of opportunities, and I think is putting yourself in front of opportunity is really important. I'm not sure, actually. I'm trying to remember the question, and I'm trying to make sure I answered the question.
Oh, I just meant in terms of maybe making contacts with people on a more informal basis and gathering information, getting ideas, not just sitting at a desk and thinking of researching, but the idea of interaction with people just to generate knowledge and
there's I hesitate to say it, but I'll go ahead and say it because I've already brought it up now. Like entrepreneurs can tend to sit in a room together and quote unquote, please don't be offended, get high on their own. So they're talking about stuff and like they think that they know everything, but like you got to get out in the market, talk to your customer, your wannabe customers, make sure you validate your assumptions. There's this famous company in the 1990s called Webvan that they thought they had all the problems solved from grocery delivery. They set up these warehouses and they flamed out famously because they didn't validate any of their assumptions because they were not out there understanding the market and talking to people. And it's actually, we've had a challenge with that, with all the remote work. I love remote work. I think that helps, but to get everybody, the serendipity that happens in just the conversations around the water cooler and overhearing a conversation, being able to weigh in, let's not lose that entirely with remote work. Remote work can be great. It's very efficient. You sit 2 hours a day on commuting, but yeah, those informal social interactions are really valuable. And I mentioned, from ASP, I have an investor there. I have a key advisor there. Also, we were in our building in Colorado a year into it. Our lease, the landlord came up to me. He's like, hey, Matthew, you still raising money? And he invested, over $250,000 in the company as well. So it makes getting the HVAC on the building fixed a lot easier, that conversation. But, try to, surround yourself with those people who have similar view and your interests are aligned. Networking is important. Relationships are important. Your brand, your reputation, your integrity, all of that stuff. Nobody forgets, something bad that happens. So, that's what I would say.
I think another thing, Janet, is to try and think big in terms of at least possibilities. Not that you're necessarily going to go there. I mean, right down to naming your company. I mean, if you call yourself Wichita, whatever, I mean, what are you going to do when you grow beyond Wichita? In our industry, it's made up of single product companies. There's a roller coaster company. There's a Ferris wheel company. Our approach was completely different. We wanted to be the experts and the largest in all of the equipment in a water park. Wave equipment, interactive play, water slides, surfing machines, et cetera, et cetera. And that ended up being a huge differentiator. We use trade shows extensively globally to get the brand out there. But in terms of new product development, yeah, you've got to talk to your customers. Yes, you've got to be out there, et cetera, et cetera. But it's a little bit Steve Jobs as well. They don't know what they don't know what they want. We will tell them what they want. And there's some industries that lend themselves a little bit more to that. I mean, certainly that was his experience. I will tell the customers what they want, and then they will want it. And ours is a little bit like that. The startup that I was referring to, introducing a new sport to the world, inland surfing. These pools are 2 football fields in length, a 3-meter high wave every 8 seconds. And we've installed in Munich. We've installed just opening in Riyadh, just signed in Mexico, in Dallas, in London, and it's just taking off. And these are incredibly high-profile activities because there's that culture, and that culture's got massive sex appeal. You know, the surfers have their own clothing, they've got their own lingo, and it's the cool thing to do, and everybody can do it. So our notion is to, much like the guy that invented the swimming pool, and now they're in every backyard in every municipality, do this with these big surf pools as well, and you will see them globally around the world. Great fun.
So I have a
And
question.
no, I don't. My
No,
son does.
I was about to. No, I wasn't going to ask if you. I was going to say that's why I surf, because of it's such a hot and sexy thing to do. Christy, you mentioned that you're going back to school for nutrition, but that didn't prevent you from starting your business to start with. What was your degree in?
Foreign languages and literature.
See, so this is one of the. So I have this question for everybody: is what role did education versus experience, I guess, play in you getting your company off the ground? Marie, what was your degree in? I'm assuming people went to college.
Yeah, no, I learned a lot about marketing at American Express, marketing and branding, and I have to say that informed that I found that experience to be vital in what I did. I also worked at a smaller company called Nelson Information, which doesn't exist anymore, and I was one of the 4 people running it. And I'd say those 2 experiences by far I could not have launched Teen Life without that. So
And what was
I'm a
your
big
degree in?
my degrees. I have an MBA. So I was an
Okay.
engineer undergrad. So I love databases and solving problems and stuff. But then
Yeah.
my MBA was hugely helpful, and marketing was like my favorite subject.
Cool. Luke, you got a question? I want to fit it in before we run out of time.
Yeah, hi. So my question is for anyone, and it's kind of just looking back on your journeys as entrepreneurs. Are there any like unexpected or like easily overlooked factors that you would say contributed to your success?
Matt, why don't you?
Overlooked factors. I guess I'm trying to think. Yeah, I think early in my career, I had made more assumptions that I was right without third part, validating those things by going in and talking with other people. I felt so convicted about something. Speech recognition, was an interesting one because I love the idea of that autonomy and so on. But what I overlooked was the idea of being in an office with other people and everybody talking to your computer, and it's disruptive, right? So maybe the right market is in an elevator or some other context. I talk to my computer all the time. I'm always dictating stuff, so I figured out how to mitigate that. But it's just not something you think about, the environmental factor of that. And you only learn that by doing that. And it's one thing to design something on your computer. It's another thing to start using it in the real world. You're just going to encounter things and learn things that would never come up. So I forget who said it. Maybe it was Jeff who said, just like Nike, just do it. And when you get out there, do it. You learn so much about doing that. And the other comment that somebody, the discussion point was about, Steve Jobs is famous for not wanting to do focus groups. It's like, they don't know what I want. They don't know what they want because they don't know what's possible. And, at a water park, I don't know what I want because I don't know what's possible. And Jeff knows better what's possible and what's safe and what's economical and what can you build from a physics perspective. And so he can connect all the dots and make sure that. So don't, make sure you validate all your assumptions with real world empirical data.
Excellent.
So there are things that occur that break your way. There are things that occur that obviously break the opposite way. 9/11 came along and it was obviously a massive disaster. On our industry, that caused the American families to say, we're not getting on a plane. We're not visiting grandma in Europe or California. We're staying home. So they got the kids in the summertime. So they got to do something. What do? They go to a water park a couple of extra times. So there was actually a bit of a boom there. But world events impact us all. I mean, we're in the middle of tariffs right now. Up until 2 days ago, we had 145% tariff on steel that we import from China. One project alone in New Jersey, Kalahari, $4 million hit to our bottom line just on tariffs. And because we've already got a signed contract, we can't change the contract. When Whitewater started in 1980, interest rates in Canada were 22%. I mean, just imagine 22%. Imagine your house mortgage and it going up to 22%. What would that do to you and your family? So, I mean, there are global events, and one of my tie always to the American School of Paris is that on the one hand, we're the largest globally in our sector in the industry. But I attribute that to my experience at ASP. And I was mentioning this 2 weeks ago when I was talking to the class at ASP in Garsh. You don't recognize it at the time. And I quoted Joni Mitchell. You don't know what you've got till it's gone. Yellow Taxi. Tina, you remember that one. And that was my point to the students there. By osmosis, you're getting a feel that this is a big world. And your buddies back in Arkansas, they're not getting that. You're getting that, and you won't recognize it until later on, until you realize that the world is your oyster. And much like Matt taking huge advantage of that, we've taken huge advantage of that. And I attribute that in a massive way to my experience at ASP.
I can add a little bit to that too. We lived in Europe for 13 years. We were in Vienna first. I went to 3 different schools there. We were in Paris. I went to 3 different schools there. But just living internationally like that and meeting people from so many different places, and the whole international school experience, I think, has definitely made me better or more confident, I guess, getting out there and asking questions and meeting new people and just, I'm not afraid of that. And I think that is because of having lived over there and gone to ASP and some of the other international schools that we went to. I'm very comfortable with just about anybody. So,
Chrissy, I'm really glad you brought that up, because that was one of my questions, is the effect, does living overseas have an effect on helping people to start those businesses? But we're going to have to wrap it up, because I promised. And I know you guys have all been taking notes that you're going to write on your wall as things to take away. Some of mine are validate your theory, which I think is related to don't get high on your own, but that there's that. I think, Jeff, I'm not saying this right, but it's basically don't get a job, get a life, something like that. Just do it. We've all heard that one before. And then a really good one is think like an owner. Even if you're working with somebody else, think like an owner. When you're hiring people, you want people who think like an owner of it.
Mm-hmm.
So
right people on the bus would be the last one there, Clive.
Yeah, right people.
I would add another one, which is make sure you have a good business model. Make sure you understand how you're going to make money.
Hey, Clive, one of the things I think some of these guys talked about was teamwork. And one of the interesting stories from our days in ASP was that famous ASP soccer trip to Zurich. And I'll never forget that we were in the last game, and I don't remember who we were playing, but we were up 1-0, and somebody had a foul, and the other team got a penalty shot against us. And then this young kid, this young Dutchman, decides to walk across right in front of this guy and just totally make him lose his concentration. And the guy missed the shot, and we won. And the guy was Jacques Shapiro.
Oh,
But the other side of that is the goalie was Bob Schubert on this call.
On that note,
on that note. So thanks again, everybody. Really appreciate it. Special thanks to Jeff and Matt and Christy and Marie. And we will have some special ASP swag on its way to you for your participation, because I know you really want that. And you know, all of you, please, you heard Jeff was here visiting with the kids. Please don't forget, if you're over this way, to come visit us. We also do alumni reunions in various places around the world, so just keep an eye out for those things. Special thanks also to Janet for organizing this whole thing and sending it out to everyone. And we hope to see you on these calls again.
And Janet and Clive, you guys are both invited to the 20th reunion call of the class of 70 on June 10th.
Excellent. Do we know this already?
Janet should have the information. I'll send me an email and I'll get you on the list, and we'll put you on. But yeah, we're going to do our 20th reunion call. We do them quarterly now.
I look forward to it.
And the background of my picture is the class reunion in a couple years ago in Washington, D.C.
I don't know.
You're blacked out, Bob.
We're blacked out, so I can't see.
Your video's not on.
I have a copy of it in my office. I'll show it to you.
Okay. You guys are
Okay.
working together all the time, and I know. See, this is why I do this, because I know that we would stay on this call for hours and hours. So, but-
Yeah, our first call was
guys.
4.5 hours.
all right. Thanks,
Bye.
everybody.
Come back next
Bye.
time.
Bye.
Bye,
everyone.
thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.